Order. Irene Campbell to move the motion.
I beg to move that this House has considered E-petition 706-302 relating to the use of cages and crates for farmed animals. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr Mundell. The petition is named End the Use of Cages and Crates for All Farmed Animals and was created by Dame Joanna Lumley. This petition has reached over 105,000 signatures, and the petition reads, "We think the UK Government must ban all cages for laying hens as soon as possible. We think it should also ban the use of all cages and crates for all farmed animals, including farrowing crates for sows, individual calf pens and cages for other birds, including partridges, pheasants and quail. Every year in the UK, millions of farmed animals experience huge suffering confined in cages, from millions of laying hens unable to express their natural behaviours, to mother pigs nursing their piglets confined in narrow crates, to calves, quail and game birds. Surely we cannot allow this to continue. When polled, most people are against cages for farmed animals, and this debate provides an opportunity to highlight the seriousness of this issue and to encourage a more rapid solution and approach to phasing these out. For example, it must be viewed as positive that we have reached an 80% figure for free-range chickens, and I will say more about that later.
Will the Honourable Lady give way?
I will give way.
I thank the Honourable Lady for giving way. It doesn't seem very long since we were last here talking about eggs and chickens, though I imagine it feels a lot longer if you're stuck in a cage only the size of an A4 piece of paper. Would the Honourable Lady agree that we need to learn lessons from other countries, including Austria and Luxembourg, because our hens need as good and better standards?
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention. I fully agree with everything you've said, and I will cover that later on in this debate. So I must declare an interest. I hosted a drop-in event on farrowing crates earlier this month with Humane World for Animals UK. There was great interest in this event, and I'm delighted to say that turnout amongst honourable members was high. The event raised awareness of the conditions that sows are kept in some British pig farms, and we had a replica life-size crate with a life-size animated pig on display to bring this to life and to let people see how small the farrowing crate and confinement conditions actually are. So these crates are barred, they're metal, often barren, and their cramped and unhygienic conditions can lead to disease and overuse of antibiotics. A poll by Humane World for Animals found that about 73% of people in the UK had either never heard of farrowing crates or did not know very much about them. Hopefully today's debate will change this. About 200,000 sows every year spend nearly a quarter of their lives in these farrowing stalls, which are so small they cannot even turn around, nestle their piglets or express natural behaviours like rooting or nest building. The crates prevent the sow from getting away from the piglets when they start biting her teats, and so the piglets' teeth are often ground down or clipped, which seems a very cruel practice. The piglets are then removed when they are 3 to 4 weeks old, compared to in the wild where the sow would feed piglets for up to 11 to 13 weeks. After a couple of weeks, the sow is inseminated again. Sows are likely to have 2 litters a year of 10 to 12 piglets and a breeding lifespan of 3 years before they are then sold for slaughter, which is really quite miserable. On a positive note, though, free farrowing systems do exist where sows are non-confined during farrowing, and lactation can allow the expression of nest-building behaviour as well as free movement. These systems make up about 40% of the industry. Group systems of zero confinement also allow these expressions in free movement and can also increase the social interactions of sows. Although it is suggested that zero confinement systems can increase crushing incidents, research has demonstrated that there is little difference in piglet mortality from those housed in loose farrowing systems and those in farrowing crates. The number of piglets crushed was higher in loose farrowing, but the number of piglets dying from other causes was higher in crates. So the mortality of piglets related to other factors such as size at birth, age of sow and season. And one study from Denmark demonstrated that the factors which contributed to pre-weaning death in piglets were being born into a litter with one or more stillborn litter mates, the number of litters farrowed by the sow and possibly the time of year. I will give way.
Thank you. Very briefly, she declared one interest. Could I very quickly declare two? One as a patron of the Conservative Animal Welfare Foundation, who've campaigned passionately on this issue for many years. And secondly, because indeed our great friend, Sir David Amess, felt very passionately about this. The farrowing crates issue was something very close to his heart. So twice over, if I dare put it like that, would she agree with me that this outdated practice must be banned?
I thank the honourable member for his intervention, and I couldn't agree more. And it actually just reminded me that I have to declare my interest because I'm a member of the Labour Animal Welfare Society. So thank you for reminding me of that. So 84% of people in Scotland said that they think that farrowing crates should be banned immediately or in the next 5 years. Additionally, over half of Scots said they were willing to pay more for pork that was not produced using farrowing crates, and this is something to bear in mind. And although the previous government stated in 2019 that farrowing crates should be banned, consultation never took place on phasing them out. So this debate is an opportunity to get this discussion and hopefully consultation underway. It is a positive step that there is consensus from various organisations that farrowing crates should be banned, even if differing timelines are being suggested. For example, the British Veterinary Association, the BVA, is also in favour of banning farrowing crates. The BVA found that 75% of vets are concerned about the impact of farrowing crates on the welfare of pigs, with 36% of these vets saying they were very concerned. They are now calling for a gradual phasing out of the crates over a 15-year period for a system which favours the health of both the sow and the piglets. They have also recommended government producers and retailers should implement an awareness campaign for consumers, sharing best practice, thus demonstrating there must be scope to ensure better and more accurate labelling of products, and I'll say more about this later. So in preparing for this debate, meetings were held with the National Pig Association, the National Farmers Union, the RSPCA, Compassion in World Farming and the petitioner Dame Joanna Lumley. Whilst I'm pleased to say the National Pig Association agree with a transition to flexible farrowing systems, they wish to do this over a 20-year period. And it is good to see there is agreement over the phasing out of this practice. The RSPCA confirmed that their own pig experts found that a transition should take no longer than 10 years. And furthermore, Dr Alice Brough, a former pig industry vet, said, "We banned gestation crates in 1999 and we have had 26 years to prepare for this obvious follow-on." With this consensus, surely there must be scope to agree a shorter and a speedier timeline. And now I'm going to consider hens. I also met with the NFU to discuss their views on enriched cages for laying hens, which disappointingly they do still support. It is hugely positive that the vast majority of hens are not kept in cages, but we cannot forget about the 23% of eggs which are still laid by hens in cages. We know that this transition is doable and practical, and again we must get a timeline in place to see an end to this practice. In 2022, polling found that 94% of the public oppose the use of enriched cages for hens. These cages replace battery cages which were banned when the UK adopted the EU Council Directive in 2012. However, these enriched colony cages have only 9% more usable space per bird than the previous battery cages and are hardly bigger than this size of A4 paper. So every year in the UK, a shocking 8 million layer hens spend their lives in these cages. Like pigs, many of their natural behaviours are restricted by these cages, which give chickens a space similar in size, as I've just said, to an A4 sheet of paper. They cannot flap their wings, perch, dust bathe, and so this can cause frustration, bone weakness and osteoporosis. How enriched are these cages if confinement is so extreme? It is important to note here another key issue related to chicken farming, known as hatch and dispatch. 86 male chicks are killed every minute in the UK, which is 45 million baby chicks a year. However, this cruel practice is today unnecessary, as countries such as France and Germany have already mandated the use of in ovo sexing technology, which determines the sex of a chick before they can feel pain. With in ovo sexing, eggs can be discarded before they have to hatch. To implement this technology, it is estimated to add less than the cost of 1p per egg. Surely the UK must adopt this system without delay. Also, groups of pheasant... I will.
I'm grateful for that. Does my honourable friend agree with me that she talks about the addition of 1p per egg, but would she agree with me that it would be an important fact to support the phasing out of cages and crates to increase the ability for the state to say there will be some sort of financial incentive or some sort of financial reason to do these things? Otherwise, we're not going to see this happen en masse.
I thank my honourable friend. for his intervention. I do agree with that, and that is an issue that I have mentioned later on, that there has to be support for this. So, groups of pheasant and pairs of partridges are also kept in breeding cages, again offering each bird little more room than the size of a sheet of A4 paper. These birds suffer from stress, breeding-related injuries and death. There is no specific legislation over how birds should be treated apart from 2009 DEFRA guidance. Surely this must be urgently reviewed. Many quail are still kept in battery cage systems or overcrowded barns, raising their stress levels and making them aggressive. They can fly upwards very quickly to get away from danger, and so this limited space leads them to injuring themselves by hitting their heads. However, alternatives do exist, such as barns with more space and better natural conditions. At RSPCA Assured Farms, the UK's only higher welfare farm assurance and food labelling scheme, cages are not allowed. Laying hens are kept on free-range farms or large barns where they are free to roam, and sows are loose-housed, either indoors with more space or outdoors in paddocks with access to shelter. These higher welfare standards are increasing in market share and popularity. For example, now major retailers like McDonald's only use 100% RSPCA assured pork and free-range eggs, thus demonstrating these restrictive crates and cages are not the only options for our farms or our retailers. It is definitely time for the UK to catch up to the animal welfare standards of other countries. We call ourselves a nation of animal lovers, but are we really? People may be surprised to hear that the UK is now ranked 9th in Europe by the percentage of cage-free animals, and a number of other European countries have already banned or are phasing out farrowing crates and enriched cages. For example, farrowing crates are now banned in Norway, Sweden and Switzerland. Enriched cages, as we heard earlier, are banned in Austria, Luxembourg and Switzerland, will be banned in Germany from 2025, in Czech Republic from 2027, in Slovakia from 2030, and France has banned the installation of new enriched cages. The EU Commission has also confirmed that it intends to phase out cages across the EU. Loose farrowing systems have mainly been used in Switzerland since 1997, and the studies there have again found that piglet loss in these systems was due mostly to sow-related characteristics rather than the farrowing pen. The reason loose farrowing systems are not used in other countries is because of the fear of piglets being crushed by the sow, yet this research showed that this system did not increase pig mortality due to crushing. On the 17th of February, the government responded to this petition, saying that the use of cages and close confinement systems is being considered very carefully. They are currently supporting the transition to free-range laying hens through grants and reiterated the requirements for calves confined for rearing and fattening, as well as guidance on meeting the welfare standards of game birds. The government's response also details the effect that ending the use of farrowing crates would have on trade, which was much discussed in the debate earlier this month, particularly in relation to phasing out low welfare imports from the UK's trading partners. When looking at legislation related to this issue, it is important that we consider mandatory labelling to inform customers of the welfare of the animals they are choosing to eat. In addition to this, we need to ensure equivalence in animal welfare standards for imported products in order to support our British farmers who adhere to these higher standards. It is important that farmers are supported to make these transitions discussed today. Phasing out low animal welfare imports that do not meet our own animal welfare standards is urgently required, and British farmers must not be at a disadvantage. In the response to the debate on animal welfare standards in farming earlier this month, the Minister confirmed again that the topic of close confinement systems for farm animals is one that is receiving careful attention, and that he is well aware of the long-running campaigns on caged animals. I am looking forward to hearing from the Minister again today, as well as from other members present. Thank you.
Members that they should bob if they wish to be called in the debate. The question is that this House has considered E-petition 706302 relating to the use of cages and crates for farm animals. Charlie Dewhurst.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today. Thank you very much for the opening remarks there. I just want to declare additional interest that for 3.5 years prior to last July, I was an employee of the National Pig Association, and my cousin is a pig farmer. And I'd like to refute just a couple of the things, I think, in those opening remarks, particularly that Britain is not a world leader in animal welfare, because it very much is. And we can pick other examples around the world where we often mention trade deals we wouldn't want to import from those countries because they simply don't meet our standards. So we shouldn't do ourselves down. In certain areas, there are always going to be countries that have a higher bar than we do. But overall, I think the UK does a particularly good job across the board on animal welfare. And I just want to move on to address the issue of farrowing crates, the current system of farrowing crates, and why those exist. It's not out of some desire for farmers to be cruel to the animals. Of course it isn't. And I appreciate that the perception of looking at a pig that's in a crate and you think, gosh, does it live in that confined space? Well, of course it doesn't. It's for a limited period around the time that the sow gives birth. And there is good reason for that, because sows often become extremely aggressive around the time they give birth, not just to the piglets, but also to the farmers. So being able to confine them protects piglets from crushing, from mauling, and it allows the farmers to be able to get into the crate, to look after the piglets, to administer any treatments to maybe the sow or to the piglets, and to operate in a safe environment. And if anyone questions the veracity of how aggressive a sow can be around this time, I'm delighted to arrange the opportunity for you to get in a pen with an aggressive sow and see if that perhaps changes your perspective. And I would question some of the statistics as well. To say that there are no difference in mortality across these systems, a totally unrestricted pen system is likely to lead to around 1 million more piglet deaths a year in this country than a confined system. However, there is a point to be made about this current the system that we use today and whether it can be improved. Because obviously all farmers want to minimise the time in which a sow is restrained around that time, and it's for safety reasons only. So the move to more flexible farrowing systems, which would still allow, when they need to get in there, to restrain the sow, to ensure there is safety, has already been adopted by the industry. And the minister, in his shadow role, was always very, very, very understanding of the farming point of view on this, I would say. I think he engaged very closely with the industry, and I think it's right that we're now seeing the industry move, without government legislating, towards much better systems in terms of limiting sow confinement. So flexible farrowing is now available in 8% of the indoor pig industry. That's 5,000 of the pens. There are another 55,000 to go, but this will take time. And the point about transition is very interesting, because actually you can't just say, well, tomorrow you need to move from this system to this system. These are fixtures and fittings in buildings. A lot of these buildings will actually need to be rebuilt completely, which will require planning permission. It requires vast cost. So what we need to do is work with the farmers to say, what is the realistic timescale? So we don't leave people high and dry. We don't mean they're put out of business. I'll come to an example of this previously. But we need to make sure that they have the resources and the time to move to a better system, to a higher welfare system, and something which I think we can all get behind, because it is better that the government works with farmers and not just does stuff to them. There's often a debate as well, and a lack of understanding around indoor versus outdoor in pig farming. It would seem rather aspirational, wouldn't it, if all our pigs were outdoor, and the 100% of the UK pig industry should be like that, but that isn't possible. We are actually the maximum amount of land we can use for outdoor pigs. Outdoor pig farmers operate a different model to, say, arable farmers. They tend to rent the land for a period of 2 to 3 years. They move on. They're very much part of a symbiotic relationship with other farmers, particularly around the sort of East Anglia area where you've got the right type of soil for it. Indoor pig farming is much better suited to other parts of the country, like my constituency of Bridlington, the Wolds, where you've got very high-grade arable land, and you have the pigs there where you're producing slurry, so you've got a natural source of fertiliser for them, and of course the excellent pork and bacon that you get from a pig. Now the petition wants a ban. I think a ban, if the industry continues to move in the right direction, is not necessarily something that needs to be implemented. But I would give the warning from history from 1999, when the Tony Blair government unilaterally banned sow stalls overnight, with no transition, no compensation. Similar situation, because these were also fixtures and fittings of the building. 50% of the British pig industry went bust, because they simply couldn't afford to transition. We have to be very mindful of that in anything we do here when creating legislation that impacts businesses, farming or any other, frankly. And what happened? Of course it will. Yeah.
I thank the honourable member for giving way. Like many people here, I'm wearing a couple of hats. I'm the son of a farmer, so I can declare that interest, but I'm also a member of the Labour Animal Welfare Society. I really welcome his insights there as someone who has experience of the industry, because farmers have contacted me, and actually my granddad was attacked by a sow. He was a vet. He went into hospital for several months and never really recovered from that incident. So he's absolutely right that sows can be very dangerous. But I would come back to the point that he's already made, and would he agree with me? It's absolutely essential that farmers are engaged in this conversation alongside animal welfare activists so that we can agree the right path forward, because I think everybody wants to get there, but the transition is really essential.
No, thank you very much. Thanks, Chair. No, absolutely, I do agree. I think it's really important that everybody works together, whether it's the pressure groups, the farmers, and of course government. And sometimes there's a need to understand the two extremes of the debate need to understand each other. Often these things seem simpler than they are, and there are reasons why we do things on farm that for very good reason, often seemingly for better welfare when people might perceive it not to be. I mean, there's another great example when you talk about the overall perception of pig farming. You say, well, outdoor versus indoor, well, indoor's far better for the environment. There's a big problem with outdoor pig farming in terms of environmental impact, which is often forgotten because we talk about welfare, and then welfare clashes with environmental impact. And all of that comes together, which means we have to make balanced decisions about how we support the farmers across the country. I really just want to conclude by saying we need to make sure that this is a conversation where we bring the farming community along with us. Whether it's pigs or poultry or anything else that we're discussing today, let us not be doing stuff to them. Let's work with them. Let's work out a plan that ensures that, yes, we can achieve what we want to in terms of better animal welfare, but we also don't do that at the expense of British farming, at the expense of British food security, at the expense of British jobs, and that we don't then end up replacing our own great British produce with imports produced to the lower standards than we would expect. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. I call Steve Yem.
Thank you.
So it's just Mr. Terry.
Under your chairmanship, Mr. Mundell, and I'd also like to thank the Honourable Member for North Ayrshire and Arran for securing this important debate this afternoon. In the UK, we're often said to be a nation of animal lovers, and judging by my constituency inbox, Mansfield is very much a constituency of animal lovers. Indeed, since becoming the member for Mansfield, I've received hundreds of emails on a very wide range of animal welfare issues, including ending the ending the import of foie gras products, the fur trade, but of course, many emails on ending the use of cages and crates for farmed animals. My constituent Lynn from Ladybrook recently wrote and said that she was worried that caged farm animals were, in her words, unable to express their natural behaviours and experience an unimaginable amount of suffering. Angela, another constituent from Mansfield, said in an email leading up to this debate, and she asked me to speak here today, that she was concerned that some farmed animals were kept in cramped and often dirty cages, barely leaving them room to move, to spread their wings or stretch their legs. Philip, another Mansfield constituent, said in his correspondence that according to a recent survey undertaken by the RSPCA, and I quote from his email, that 84% of the British public oppose the use of cages for laying hens, and 78% of people oppose the use of farrowing crates. So clearly, many of my constituents want to ensure that we have the highest welfare standards in our farms, and I know that farmers will often share this view and don't want their livestock to suffer. And I think we all want to know that the food that we're eating has not been produced on the back of pain and suffering. Last summer, Mr. Chairman, I stood on a manifesto that promised to improve animal welfare, to ban trail hunting and the import of hunting trophies, end puppy smuggling and farming, end the use of snare traps, as well as work with scientists and industry to work towards a reduction in the use of animal testing. And I'm proud to have stood on that manifesto, and I know that other Labour members, and indeed the Minister here with us today, will feel exactly the same way as I do. So I very much hope that the government update to the animal welfare strategy that I understand is due to be published later this year will make that progress towards delivering on our manifesto promises from last summer, and that ministers will want to include the issues that we're debating today within that strategy. Legislation to improve the lives of animals has formed a vital part of the legacy of past Labour governments, and I expect and I hope that the work of this Labour government will be no different.
I call Carol Vaughan.
Thank you, Mr Mundell. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and thank you to the Petitions Committee for calling this important debate and the member for North Ayrshire and Arran for introducing it. The call to end the cage age of animal farming is clear. It comes not just from Parliament and politicians, but from the public. And nowhere more so than in my constituency, more people have signed the petition to end the use of cages and crates for farmed animals in South Devon than in any other constituency in the country. And that is a powerful message from a rural farming community demanding a future built on compassion, not cruelty. And I'd like to thank the 513 people from South Devon who signed this petition. I urge this government to keep its promise and finally take action to end the cage age of animal farming, not through vague pledges or delayed consultations, but with a clear strategy delivered within this Parliament. Farrowing crates and other cruel confinement practices belong to the past. They cause immense suffering, denying animals basic freedoms and dignity. In 2025, this is simply unacceptable. And I would add to that the thousands of birds who are kept in cages for so-called sport. The Liberal Democrats have a long-standing record of standing up for animals. We have consistently supported stronger penalties for animal cruelty, higher welfare standards in farming, and while in government, put in place a ban on battery cages for laying hens. And I'd like to now see this extended to all cages, but as others have so rightly said, it must be done carefully and in consultation with farmers and producers. For too long now, we have been pushing the government to launch a consultation into the use of farrowing crates for pigs and to end the use of cages for farm animals. Our farmers are key to delivering that future. We know they care deeply about animal welfare, and they've been badly let down, betrayed by trade deals that undercut our high welfare standards, failed by poorly designed and delayed subsidy schemes, and denied the workforce and funding they need to thrive. In order to make these changes to caged animal farming, we must offer farmers the support they need to transition. So let's talk about that support, because the numbers are frankly outrageous. The government is spending £67.5 billion on defence, over 5% of total public spending, while the entire DEFRA budget languishes at just £7.4 billion, barely 0.6%. And when you look more closely, farming itself receives just £2.4 billion, which is a meagre 0.2% of the national budget. To put that into perspective, all of DEFRA's spending, not just farming, but the environment, food and rural affairs, adds up to just 11% of what we spend on defence. Mr Chair, food security is part of our national security, but how can we claim to prioritise food security, rural livelihoods or animal welfare with numbers like that? Farming does take the largest share of DEFRA's budget, but that's nearly 1/3 of a shockingly small pie. Meanwhile, the programmes meant to support the future of farming, to improve animal welfare and to restore our natural environment, the Sustainable Farming Incentive, Countryside Stewardship and Landscape Recovery, have been hit with a £100 million cut. Cuts in the middle of a climate crisis. Cuts while farmers struggle to meet higher standards that we're demanding with fewer resources. Cuts when public demand for ethical farming has never been stronger. The Liberal Democrats stand with our farmers and our animals. We're calling for an extra £1 billion in the farming budget to support higher welfare standards, proper training and workforce investment. And we will keep fighting to ensure no food can be imported or sold in the UK if it's produced in a way that would be illegal here.
Would your friend give way on that point?
I will give way.
I thank my friend for giving way and congratulate her on an excellent speech. Would she agree with me that lots of British farmers, like many in my North Cornwall constituency, are trying to move away from confined systems like crates, but until the government insists on applying UK animal welfare standards to imported food, our farmers will be undercut by cheaper, lower welfare imports?
I thank my honourable friend for his contribution, and I think it's absolutely key that if we're going to demand higher and higher standards here, we absolutely must apply the same standards to food that we're importing. So I say to the Minister, if you truly believe that food security is national security, then that needs to be backed up with real investment, not empty slogans or spreadsheet cuts, but real support for our farmers. Listen to communities like South Devon who are demanding that we act. We banned battery cages in 2012, and now it's time to finish the job. Let this Parliament be the one that truly ends the cage age.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mandela. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I'd like to thank my honourable friend for opening this debate on behalf of the Petitions Committee. It's a debate that's attracted a lot of interest in my South West Norfolk constituency. We care passionately about the environment, about climate and about animal welfare, and as has been observed already, we are an area with plenty of chickens and plenty of pigs. Frankly, they are our neighbours, acutely aware of their welfare. They're all around us in my constituency, so no wonder that so many residents have been in touch with me over the last year. Every year in the UK, over 7 million farmed animals are confined to cages for all or part of their lives. 20% of the UK's eggs are produced in these cages, and as has been observed, battery cages and enriched battery cages in which hens have around a space of A4 sheet of paper remain legal. In farrowing crates, sows are unable to turn around, nestle their piglets or express natural roosting or nest building behaviours. These restrictions lead to severe welfare problems for sows and piglets, and it's important to recognise that many of these crates and cages prevent key natural behaviours. Fortunately, all of the UK supermarkets have either already stopped selling eggs from caged hens or have committed to do so by the end of 2025. However, once these commitments are realised, it is estimated there will still be around 10% of the UK's hens remaining in cages. 10% too many. Indeed.
I thank the honourable member for giving way. I just want to raise awareness of the RSPCA's Assured scheme, which now accounts for 55% of the UK's laying hens and 25% of its pigs. And does the honourable member agree with me that that demonstrates that there is ongoing and increasing public support for higher welfare meat and eggs, and even if the cost is slightly higher as a result?
I thank my honourable friend for that intervention, and I entirely agree, and it's through good work of organisations like the RSPCA that we can make greater awareness of these improved standards. As I've mentioned in this chamber recently, and as reported in The Guardian just last week, my Freedom of Information requests have found that industrial farms had broken environmental regulations nearly 7,000 times in the last 10 years, and that includes regulations in relation to animal welfare. For example, a farm was found to be stocking more than 400,000 animals instead of the permitted 357,000. The permitted amounts are already very high, so any increase over and above the permitted amount will cause further distress for animals. And given the numbers involved, I really do worry about routine overcrowding and a lack of regulation. And it's important to consider the implications of that intensity in relation to disease as well. And a new report from the National Audit Office, published only this month on animal resilience, revealed there are serious gaps in the UK's ability to respond to major animal disease outbreaks, including bird flu and foot and mouth, which have cost farmers and the government millions of pounds. We must recognise that human health and animal health are linked. We need to have a serious conversation about what sort of farming we want to pursue. And as the Minister will know, I grew up in Norfolk, I'm from Norfolk, I visit farms on a routine basis, and farmers are under increasing pressure from a whole range of factors: disease, profitability, climate change, drought and more.
Most farmers I know in South West Norfolk care passionately about their animals, and they want to do all they can to improve animal welfare conditions, but as has been highlighted already, they need support with that transition. This fundamentally comes down to fairness about finances, and fairness too about labelling. We had a debate here recently, and I think there's some really interesting points made about labelling and how fairness is at the heart of that to make the public can make informed choices. The NFU estimate that there is a cost of between £5,000 and £8,000 to replace the 60,000 conventional farrowing crates that are currently in use across the UK. This transition must be supported by the market and some sort of financial provision or incentive, either by infrastructure grants or via the supply chain, in order to make it viable for producers and not put businesses out of pig production. It is crucial that the transition is staged and well supported by both the government and devolved governments where relevant to support our farming communities. And once I have the opportunity to do so, may I pay tribute to the various animal welfare organisations campaigning on these issues and raising awareness, which is so important. And that includes the RSPCA, has been mentioned, but also World Animal Protection, Compassion in World Farming, and also the World Wildlife Fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mundell. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and I would like to thank my honourable friend, the member for North Ayrshire and Arran, for introducing this important debate. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Whoever is kind to the creatures of God, he is kind to himself." Caring for animals is not just an ethical issue in Islam, it is an act of worship to God. Mahatma Gandhi said, "The greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated." The way we treat farmed animals in this country is not only our responsibility, but a reflection of our values and what we stand for in this country. Unfortunately, right now, the reflection I see is distorted, because despite all the proud talk about Britain's leadership on animal welfare, millions of animals are still confined in cages and crates that violate the most basic standards of dignity and care. So I rise today in support of this petition, not just because of what it asks, to ban cages for laying hens, farrowing crates for sows, and individual pens for calves, but because of what it represents. A call for us to honour our moral duty to animals who feed us, often clothe us, and we see ourselves as their caretakers. It's a call echoed by my constituents of Dewsbury and Batley, who are deeply disturbed that despite UK legislation which protects animals, practices like farrowing crates in rich cages and calf pens remain legal in the UK. Legal, but increasingly indefensible. Just because something is legal does not always mean it is right. Many highlight that after watching documentaries or seeing images, they are horrified by how our food industry treats animals throughout their lifetime, simply to make it easier to farm their produce. An example lies within the recent footage from a Devon pig farm exposed by campaigners and reported by The Guardian. In that footage, sows are shown trapped in crates so tight they cannot turn around, care properly for their piglets, or even lie down in comfort. In this practice, the pig is reduced to a machine, treated as an object for the benefit of the food industry. This is a moral failing. Let's be clear, the farrowing crate is not an unfortunate glitch in a mostly humane system. It is the system itself, and it's built on a trade-off we no longer need to accept. We prioritise production over compassion, but the public support is strong, and nearly 75% of vets are concerned about the welfare impact of farrowing crates. So what are we waiting for? I will give way.
Thank you for giving way. Would you agree, though, that it is very encouraging that the industry is already making great strides to move away from the traditional crating system to new flexible systems? And as I say, we've already seen 8% now of those systems change in the last couple of years.
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention. I completely agree. And I do not stand here to oppose farmers and the critical work that they do and the food that they provide our country. What I hope the government will push now is to speed up that transition and support farmers
who already implemented the 8% and support the other 92% to make that transition. So it's not just pigs, but birds and calves, as highlighted in this petition. One of the most shocking facts I came across while researching this topic is that hens are confined to cages that give them little more space than the size of an A4 sheet of paper. Can you imagine? The RSPCA calls these cages unacceptably restrictive, and companies like Waitrose, Sainsbury's and McDonald's have committed to change. If private businesses can do it, why hasn't the government? Other countries are in fact ahead of us. Even in Scotland, consultation has been launched on cages and farming practice. We too must follow. This is not just about discomfort, it's about denying animals a chance to express their natural behaviours, to peck, stretch, dust, bathe or nest. It's about mothers unable to care for their young, calves kept alone, unable to bond or play. These are not just welfare issues, they're dignity issues. They're about whether we accept a food system built on the routine suppression of life's most basic instincts, even if it is an animal's life. I will give way.
I thank him for giving way. I was just interested in his reflections, really. I think everything he says is absolutely valid, but if I'm a farmer and I have 200 acres of land and therefore I'm having to use some of the practices he describes, and acreage is £10,000 an acre, practically for that farmer, it's very difficult to suddenly end all of those practices by effectively acquiring 50, 100 extra acres to provide the space that's required. So I'm just interested in his reflections on how, from the farmer's perspective and from a commercial perspective, all of those objectives can be achieved.
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention, and it is a very difficult challenge. But as has been mentioned by speakers before me, the standards of food produced elsewhere from the UK and is allowed to be imported needs to meet the standards that we follow in the UK. Cost cannot be a reason to compromise on the welfare of animals. So I'm really keen to hear from the Minister on how he will help, or the government will help farmers. I will give way.
Yeah, I wonder if the member might also reflect upon our competitors, our farming competitors, particularly countries like Norway, Sweden, Switzerland to some extent, Germany, Austria, New Zealand, who have banned such practices in their pig industries, and the extent to which that means there can be a viable business model under a reformed system.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. I think we should look elsewhere for good practice and how other countries have transitioned away from these practices. So I'm not here having a go at farmers at all, but I hope the government will expedite its manifesto commitment to look at animal welfare and help farmers transition to a more humane system. So farm animals don't just feed us, they live their entire lives under farmers' care, our care. And I'm sure that we can all agree that care must mean more than simply the absence of cruelty. And even that we do not have. We cannot argue it is a radical or a long process, because alternatives are propping up and farms are taking initiative to move away without waiting for legislation. While it is embarrassing that we are not leading the way, we can catch up and set a new standard for all. A standard which will be met with little pushback, as long as we have the appropriate government support for our farmers. This debate must be the beginning of addressing intensive farming practices that strip animals of dignity in service of profit and drawing a line between industry and responsibility. If we want to be a country that preaches welfare, let's prove it. Ban the cages and give animals a life that reflects the respect they deserve, not just as a means to an end, but as living beings entrusted to our care. This is not radical, this is not responsible, this is compassion, and this is necessary. Thank you.
Joe Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Mandel. It's a pleasure to serve on the Ayrshire for the first time, and can I congratulate my honourable friend from North Ayrshire and Arran for leading this important debate. This Labour government was elected on a manifesto commitment to introduce the most comprehensive animal welfare programme in a generation. I'm pleased we're already making significant headway on this, And just to depart slightly to a broader point on animal welfare, it was animal welfare that first politicised me as a child. And I think one of the first reasons I joined the Labour Party was the last Labour government's partial ban on fox hunting. I look forward to finishing the job in this Parliament. Now, myself and my colleagues take the welfare of animals very seriously. At present, the United Kingdom has some of the highest food safety, animal welfare and environmental standards for food production in the world. But we can and we must go further. I'm sure all members sat here today share similar concerns for animals trapped in cages. Sentient animals, whether those are cows, sheep, pigs, chickens, all have the capacity to experience emotion, ranging from happiness to joy, fear, pain and distress. It's stress-inducing for animals not to engage in natural behaviours, nor to be unable to benefit from the landscapes that they're accustomed to, such as those across this country. It restricts animals from engaging in their natural behaviour, trapped in cages that restrict their movement and their freedom. Not only are cramped cages emotionally distressing, but they cause clear physical discomfort, inducing great likelihood of illness, disease and a reduced lifespan for those animals. While the United Kingdom was the first country in the world to introduce an animal protection law with the 1822 Act to prevent the cruel and improper treatment of cattle, and has subsequently stated that animals are sentient beings that deserve the highest standards of animal welfare protection, the previous administration did not do enough, in my view, on this. Instead, they broke promises regarding animal welfare, made U-turns and signed trade deals that allowed in lower quality products that did not obey health and welfare standards, omitting any mention of imports upholding the country's animal welfare standards on animal products and quietly dropping consultation of hen and pig cages while abandoning plans for mandatory welfare labelling. Happily.
And he raises the issue of imports, which I think is incredibly important because actually every farmer that I spoke to in West Dorset, pig or chicken farmer, was fully supportive of a transition. But they all raised the prospect of how do you do this in a way without driving up cost of production that increases the cost to consumer and makes imports look even more attractive.
Joe Morris.
So I think it's about having proper targeted support that involves genuine conversations, that involves listening and engaging respectfully with those communities, but also having a trade policy that stands up to those imports. And I was delighted to see the Business and Trade Secretary announce trade deals that genuinely protect the interests of the agricultural sector. I don't believe that's something that would have happened under the previous government, where farmers were far too often put on the shopping block, and I went out to farms throughout the general election campaign and since, who were sick of seeing particularly our sheep farming sector in my part of the world sent down the river. Now, so far, we've encouraged to move away from colony hen cages to free-range productions through directing grants to laying hen and pullet farms in England. Colony cages are already being replaced with non-cage systems that directly prioritise the welfare of hens. The government are supporting major supermarkets in their pledge to stop selling eggs from chickens kept in colony cages by the end of 2025. While the previous administration saw eggs from those cage productions reach 44% of the market in 2018, this government saw this reduced to 20% at the end of last year. In addition, 50% of the national sow breeding herd are giving birth in outdoor units, and we've obviously heard some of the arguments in favour of further indoor. However, while that is a step in the right direction, moving to further outdoor birth, it's imperative that constant investigation into how we can improve animal welfare standards continues, and I believe that should be part of, as the honourable member said, a genuine conversation between industry, between campaign groups and government. The work of promoting animal welfare is never one that's fully completed. It's something that it's a debate we'll be having hopefully in years to come, and it's one that's never going to be laid to rest fully. I also want to pay tribute briefly to the farmers in my constituency, who I know strive for the highest animal welfare standards, for looking after their environment, but do need our support both in terms of the international trade table and in terms of respectful, positive engagement within government. Now, as Member of Parliament for a constituency bordering Scotland, it will be unsurprising that I reference the Scottish Government's recent consultation into ending the use of animal cages. I'm glad to see that all steps are being taken to reduce the confinement system of farm animals, and it will make significant headway in fulfilling the animal welfare agenda. And I'm pleased the Government is carefully considering the use of cages and crates, and for all members engaging in this debate today who share a commitment to protecting the welfare of animals. This is also an opportunity for us to truly lead the way in protecting the welfare of animals, supporting humane farming methods, and I warmly welcome the Government's commitment to achieving the most ambitious animal welfare programme in a generation. I urge further consideration regarding the use of animal cages for farmed animals.
Thank you.
Mandel, it's a pleasure to serve with you in the chair today, and I thank the Honourable Member for North Ayrshire and Arran for agreeing to take forward this important debate, and to the 322 petitioners in Glastonbury and Somerton. Mr Mandel, as a nation, we value high animal welfare standards. The public care about animal welfare. 84% of shoppers consider it when buying their food. The UK has helped lead the way by banning veal crates for calves 16 years before the EU, and banning sow stalls 14 years before the EU's partial ban, while the Liberal Democrats in government fought to improve poultry welfare standards by implementing an all-out ban on caged hens. So moving towards a cage and crate-free future is not just good for our farmed livestock, it's crucial if we are to ensure a trusted, sustainable and resilient farming future. But despite huge progress, we still have some way to go. Some 20% of UK eggs are from hens living in enriched cages, while farrowing crates are still legal and used for up to 50% of sows in the UK. Mr Mandel, as the support for this petition shows, the public want to end the cage age. Polling highlights the strength of feeling, with 94% of people in agreement that cages for laying hens and 96% believing that farrowing crates are unacceptable. Taking the necessary steps to reduce and eliminate usage is both popular and the right thing to do, and we should implement it as soon as possible, alongside a robust transition that works with farmers to support them to raise welfare standards in pig and poultry production. This government promised to have the highest rise in animal welfare standards in a generation. And just last month, the revised Animal Health and Welfare Pathway stated that a transition out of cages is a priority. But we have yet to see that concrete action in this direction. So I urge the Minister to commit to bringing this forward today. Now, at our spring conference, the Liberal Democrats passed a new motion calling for a national strategy to end the cage age. We've also urged the government to launch a consultation on the use of farrowing crates, something the previous Conservative government failed to do, despite their promises. Now, it's not really a surprise, given that they failed to act on the 2018 Stacey review on farm regulation, and in 2023 they scrapped the Kept Animals Bill. Mr Mandel, it's time we put our ambitions back on track. The Liberal Democrats would introduce a comprehensive animal welfare bill, because we must not fall behind our European neighbours. And this action must be taken in conjunction with a strong trade policy that ensures our farmers aren't undercut. Glastonbury and Somerton is home to many farmers that take pride in upholding the highest standards. Lizzie and Rob Warrand, who run Glebe Farm, is a shining example. On their 90 acres, they run an organic outdoor herd of saddleback sows, free-range laying hens and a flock of mule ewes, with much of their produce sold direct to customers through their fantastic Pitney Farm shop and cafe. Silverthorne Shop in Melbourne Wick is a free-range farm, and they have 15,000 hens, all free to roam naturally on their 32 acres. And the eggs, as I can testify, are absolutely fantastic. And of course, there are many others, like Gilcombe Farm near Bruton, the Slow Farming Company in Castle Carey, Upton Bridge Farm in Long Sutton, and the Kimber family, who run a farm in Charlton Musgrove. Mr Mandel, these businesses are under threat. If we don't ensure trade policy is in line with domestic welfare practices, it could allow the market to be flooded with cheaper products, likely to be reared to lower standards, punishing UK farmers for doing the right thing and maintaining high welfare standards. Now, it's happening already at a time when farmers are under unprecedented pressure. It's worrying that cheaper chicken and beef from Australia, Poland and Uruguay is being increasingly seen on UK supermarket shelves, in what seems to be a glaring and hypocritical betrayal of British farmers and misleading to the consumer. Mr Mandel, there is not just a moral case to move away from crates and cages, but also a sustainable and financial case to be made too. Henry Dimbleby's National Food Strategy sets out the need for a sustainable food system, and I urge the government's new food strategy to ensure animal welfare is part of this. In addition, supporting nature-friendly farming is critical to achieving the government's environmental standards. The IPCC's special report into climate change in 2019 estimated that 8.5% of global greenhouse gas comes from animal agriculture. Mr Mundell, intensive rearing methods such as those that rely on cages and crates can create excess agricultural runoff that ends up in our rivers. While a reliance on antibiotics to treat disease and spread in part due to intensive methods can be harmful to animal and human health. Instead, nature-friendly, extensive and traditional farming methods enhance nature whilst providing food quality food for our tables. Encouraging innovative modern farming systems is also critical to grow and rear the enormous amount of food required to feed us all. But does government policy support this transition? Worryingly, research shows that intensive systems have ballooned, particularly in the pig and poultry sectors. There has been a 13% increase in factory farms over the last 5 years, with 22 million animals in mega farms in the UK. These units are purely designed to maximum production and profit. Mr Mundell, I'm concerned that the family farm tax and the reduction in nature-friendly farming incentives will only increase this number further, as smaller farms are forced to sell up to be gobbled up by bigger units, while the remaining family farms are forced to intensify in order to remain profitable. The upcoming farm profitability review should investigate this. We stand at a crucial point to reshape the future of farming in the UK, and we must take actions to secure a sustainable future. The Liberal Democrats want to support farms like this by reversing the family farm tax and investing an extra £1 billion into the farming budget. We'd also provide training, support and financial incentives for farmers to deliver world-leading animal welfare standards. Alongside this, we believe a comprehensive workflow review is needed to ensure all parts of the food supply chain is resilient, and this includes vets and local abattoirs, something that I've spoken on before in this place. Mr Mundell, ultimately, this is not only the right thing to do, but it's part of a movement that achieves the UK's goals while securing the future of farming in the UK. It's better for our animals, it's better for people, and it's better for the planet. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr Mundell. It's a pleasure to contribute with you in the chair, and it's a pleasure to follow my honourable friend from North Ayrshire and Arran, who introduced this debate so well. And it's such an important debate. As a nation of animal lovers, we rightly seek the highest welfare standards. We were the first country to create animal protection law in 1822. We were the first country to set up an animal welfare charity in 1824. And I was proud to be elected as the Member of Parliament for Bournemouth East on a manifesto that pledged the most ambitious advancement of animal welfare in a generation. Today, I want to reaffirm my commitment to my constituents of Bournemouth East, because the compassion that we show for animals represents who we are as a people. Animal welfare is extremely important, and we know this because cages and crates cause huge suffering for farm animals. We need action now to end the use of cages and crates for farmed animals because our constituents demand it. And I know this is of significant interest and importance to my constituents. 190 signed the petition, and I have had my mailbox inundated by constituents getting in touch about this particular issue. Whether it was Hillary on Carberry Avenue, whether it was Alison on Wyndham Road, or it was Angela on Chigwell Road, there is a call for action. The public in Bournemouth East wants to go further and faster, and it is good news that this government ministers are working closely with the farm sector to deliver high standards in food production, animal welfare and environmental concerns. It is good news that when it comes to laying hens, we are moving away from the use of enriched colony cages to free range and barn production, and that government grants to farmers are supporting this work. We need an urgent and full move away. Indeed, as we've just been hearing, 8 million laying hens are unable to flap their wings because they are confined in such a small, intolerable space. And it is good news that major supermarkets have pledged to stop selling shell eggs from hens kept in colony cages by the end of this year. This shift happily quickens the move away from colony cages, with free-range eggs now accounting for over 2/3 of the market. But we must go further and faster. And indeed, we may have to, because with the UK agreement in May to link to EU farm standards, if the EU brings in its own cage ban, the UK would have to reciprocate. And in France and Germany, we're seeing moves already in that direction, and with the EU Commission interested in that as an area of policy, we should be mindful. I'm proud to be a Labour Member of Parliament because, like colleagues who have spoken before me, the last Labour government provided the most comprehensive reform of animal welfare laws and policies in over a century. I'm proud too of the Labour manifesto commitments that we made on animal welfare, whether it was a proposal to ban trail hunting, to end puppy smuggling and puppy farming, to ban the use of snare traps, to ban the import of animals with fascia mutilations and cropped ears, a ban on scientific testing on dogs. And we had a debate on that very subject just a few short weeks ago, where I think the will of all MPs of all parties was extraordinarily clear. Whether it was also the ban on the import of hunting trophies, and that is a particularly timely thing for us to be considering, because on the 2nd of July it will be a decade, 10 years since the killing of Cecil the lion, and I hope this House will be focusing on that issue with renewed sharpness. And I'm pleased to see the Government pledge to ratify the High Seas Treaty, a landmark agreement that will protect marine life in international waters, covering almost 2/3 of the ocean, including sharks, whales and sea turtles, who are currently vulnerable to unsustainable and illegal fishing and other extractive industries. This is a government already supporting animals and marine life. It's a government committed to supporting animals over the course of this Parliament. It's a government that builds on the work of the last Labour government in protecting animals, and I want to stand alongside our Labour government with its commitment to introduce that ambitious programme for animal welfare, because really all of our constituents are calling on us to do better and to do it faster.
Well, Josh Newbury, our final, but I'm sure a significant contribution.
Thank you, Mr Mundell. It's a pleasure to speak with you in the chair. I too would like to thank the Honourable Member for North Ayrshire and Arran for leading the debate. I was at the Humane World for Animals event, which she referred to, and I heard her speak, so I know her passion for this subject. The petitions we debate in this place always draw a great deal of attention, but there can't be many with the level of awareness and passionate supporters as this one. Consistent polling shows that around 3/4 of the British public oppose the use of cages for hens, and 2/3 oppose the use of farrowing crates. The petitioners, therefore, are clearly in the mainstream of public opinion on this. But the reality is that all too often, consumers can't act on their values without the tools to do so, which is why labelling is so valuable, to give consumers a choice. I imagine that honourable members may be growing used to seeing me in this room debating topics like this, given that this is the third debate on animal welfare that I and many other members have attended in the last fortnight. So to curb the risk of sounding like a broken record, I will try my best not to retread old ground. What I will speak to is the prolonged suffering that cage and crate systems cause, preventing animals from carrying out basic natural behaviours like dust bathing, rooting, grooming and even turning around. The result of that is stress, frustration and sometimes injury for the animals. As has been said already, the Animal Health and Welfare Pathway acknowledged these challenges, identifying the need to transition away from so-called enriched cages, but labelling is the crucial method to do this, ensuring that farmers invest in higher welfare and those changes are visible and rewarded so that we can show the public that we are in line with their values. If we're serious about welfare washing, that is outsourcing cruelty to other countries, we must empower consumers to choose products that meaningfully reflect their values. Presently, farmers who move to higher welfare cage-free systems receive little recognition at the point of sale. Labels like free range vary significantly in their meaning and in some cases are misleading for consumers. A robust method of production labelling would inform consumers clearly about how an animal was reared, whether that be battery cage, enriched cage, free range or organic. It would allow consumers, should they wish, to choose to support farmers who are rearing to higher welfare standards, and it would reward farmers who are making costly transitions to higher welfare systems, helping to sustain rural livelihoods while staying competitive. Every supermarket shelf should carry clear, visible information about where the bacon on it came from, whether it was crate-free sow or whether that chicken lived in a cage. Right now, consumers might be paying more under the assumption that they are supporting higher British welfare standards, but they can't see whether those standards involve cages or not. Transparency is the friend of both the farmer and the shopper, and labelling is the bridge to do this. I'll be clear, this isn't about shaming farmers, quite the opposite. This is about empowering them. The transition for cage-free systems has been supported by this government via grants for laying hen and pullet farmers, and this transition has been supported by major supermarkets who, as has been said, have promised to stop selling shell eggs from caged hens by the end of this year. Some are going further, ending the use of processed eggs too. Free-range eggs now account for 69% of the total egg throughput in the UK, which shows, as the member for Bridlington and the Wolds rightly said, that we are very far ahead of many other nations on high welfare farming. Sadly, however, these measures alone will not shift the dial quickly enough, particularly on meat products, as without a comprehensive labelling system, consumers can't identify and choose higher welfare products. And without their demand and the necessary investment from retailers, farmers lack the ability to transition in a way that ensures their businesses aren't damaged by that process. Yes, gladly.
For giving way, and obviously we've discussed this at length in the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee. Would you agree with me, though, we've got to be careful with labelling, make sure it's clear that it doesn't disadvantage British farmers, because it's very likely we'll be unable to label imported products in the same way, and therefore there is a danger that actually the consumer, who might not understand the complexity, looks towards maybe an imported product over a domestic product.
Yes. Thank you. I absolutely agree with the Honourable Member, and I'm always happy to take interventions from Honourable Members with a greater level of expertise than I, and he's absolutely right that we do need to bear that in mind, and I think we also need to appreciate that it will probably be more difficult to verify the standards of imported products as well. It's much, I think, simpler for people to be able to get around any systems which are put in place, and we need to bear that in mind as well, so that, again, going back to welfare washing, consumers don't end up buying products that appear to be a higher welfare standard, but in reality are not. Animal welfare doesn't need to come at the cost of British farming. With the right transitional support, we can lift the whole sector. It's important, though, that we spell out how that transitional support would actually work and how quickly it could come about. According to the National Pig Association, on farrowing crates, it could cost around £4,000 per sow to convert an existing building and up to £8,000 per sow to build a new structure. Those figures don't include planning permission, which, as we know, does not come for free. We also need to acknowledge that higher welfare animal products carry additional costs for farmers, which have to be passed on to consumers. That's not a reason not to raise standards, because a desire for that is, of course, not limited to higher socio-economic groups. A separate issue, though, is the length of time that these conversions would take. Given the complex planning and permitting requirements and constraints in the supply chain, it's estimated that it could take at least 15 years to transition all farrowing systems to higher welfare alternatives. Whilst this government is reforming the planning sector to speed this up, we still need to acknowledge these barriers and work with farmers. We can reward good practice, reduce suffering, and ensure that our farms are known not just for productivity, but for principled production. If the science is clear, if the public is supportive, if the market is adapting and willing to go further if supported to, what are we waiting for? Including and thanking the petitioners, Mr Mundell, I say that this is our chance to end the cage age, to deliver real transparency and to reward those farmers who are already doing the right thing. By giving consumers the tools to make informed, ethical choices, we can build a food system that reflects the compassion of the British public and upholds the standards that we all believe in. Thank you.
I now call Dr Danny Chambers, the Lib Dem spokesman.
Thank you, Mr Mundell. It's an honour to serve under your chairmanship, and I thank my honourable friend from North Ayrshire for bringing forward this petition today and all the petitioners who have turned up here. Certainly, this is one of the things in my inbox that I've received. Certainly, people of Winchester are certainly passionate about this particular subject. I've received a lot of very heartfelt emails about this. And as a veterinary surgeon, I've always believed that how we treat animals reflects our values as a society. And as someone who grew up on a farm and now represents sort of very rural areas in Winchester, like around the Meon Valley, I also understand there's a deep connection between animal welfare, food production, conservation, and the livelihood of farming families. We should first acknowledge the reality is that farmers in the UK are operating to some of the highest animal welfare standards in the world. That's not to say that things can't and shouldn't be improved where we can. We want to make progress. And when we talk about ending the use of farrowing crates, we must also talk about, as many members have, supporting farmers to transition away from them, because any change has to be practical as well as it has to be ethical. And the member from Bridlington and the Wolds, with his very valuable insights, did point out how many pig farmers struggled after there was a sudden change brought in back in, was it 2000? No, 99, yeah, 99. It was a long time ago, and it devastated the industry. Now, farrowing crates are used to reduce piglet mortality to prevent crushing. It's a serious concern that no responsible farmer would take lightly. And as the NFU has rightly pointed out, we need a science-led, managed approach to phasing out their use, one that gives farmers the time, the investment and confidence to transition to higher welfare systems, such as free farrowing pens. And that's why the Liberal Democrats are calling on the government to develop a comprehensive national strategy to end the use of farrowing crates, one that is built in full consultation with farmers, vets, welfare scientists and industry stakeholders. That strategy must come with clear funding commitments, practical guidance and research and development support to trial alternatives that work in the UK's diverse farming environments. Because while the 5 freedoms, as people have mentioned earlier, include the freedom to express natural behaviours, this remains a vital benchmark for animal welfare. But we must also ensure that the sows and piglets are kept physically safe as well as psychologically enriched. I summed up our party conference this year. Actually, when I was 11 years old, I brought 13 pigs home from market, which my dad wasn't too happy about. We were a sheep farm, and I turned up with these piglets. And they sort of turned into pets, really. We used to play football with them. We had a great time with them. And comparing their behaviour to the intensive farms I had to spend time on as a veterinary student a few years later was completely different. They all had their own personalities. We've also discussed a lot about intensive chicken farming. We mentioned battery hens that we still see in some parts of the world. Although pigs are hugely intelligent and they clearly have a lot of, they require a lot of enrichment, people acknowledge that chickens are not as intelligent. There's no doubt about that. But the level of intelligence doesn't change the capacity to suffer or feel pain. And we know that intensive chicken farming, especially broiler farming, at the moment they're selectively bred to grow so quickly that the legs don't develop quick enough. And they start to develop either sores or infections or even broken limbs because of the rate at which they're growing. And those chickens feel pain and distress as much as any pig or any more intelligent animal as well. I summed up our party conference this year. We're calling for new policies for farming in general, investing in training and peer-to-peer farming learning networks, better access to apprenticeships in agriculture and farming, animal welfare, and a proper workforce plan to ensure there are enough vets, farm workers and abattoir staff across the supply chain. But these steps alone won't be enough if we allow lower welfare imports to flood British shelves. The previous government's trade deals undercut UK farmers with Australia, and it's directly undermining the standards we asked them to uphold. And so we're urging the government to ensure that any trade deals, any trade agreements will require imported food to meet UK standards and ban the sale of food that would be illegal to produce here. And this is really important because there's plenty of egg products, dried custard products that are imported that could be produced by battery hens. Because it's not only vets and farmers that are proud of our high animal welfare standards, but the British public are too. And we should not be compromising those. And we know that there are farming systems around the world that are not only worse for the environment, they're worse for animal welfare, but they also don't have the same judicious use of antibiotics as we do. And this is driving antibiotic resistance, and that is creating a public health crisis. Already 1 million people around the world die because of antibiotic-resistant infections every year. And that is going to get worse unless, as a global community, we take serious action on this issue of antimicrobial resistance. Yes, I'll happily give way.
It is worth noting that the pig industry in the UK has reduced antibiotic usage by 69% since 2015. And that's an industry initiative, so that should be applauded.
I absolutely applaud that. It's a very important intervention, and RUMA, the Responsible Use for Medicines in Agriculture, reported since 2015 that overall antibiotic use in livestock has been reduced by, I think, 59%. It's a huge reduction, and that is very much industry-led. And in the UK, it's interesting. Farmers are not permitted to treat unless there is a diagnosis and an illness and an appropriate antibiotic, whereas in other countries, antibiotics are given essentially as a substitute for low hygiene standards and to act as growth promoters. The previous Conservative government promised the biggest boost to animal welfare in a generation, but they scrapped the Kept Animals Bill, they failed to act on the 2018 Stacey Review, and they abandoned their own pledge to consult on the ending of cages for farmed animals. Chair, if we want to end the use of farrowing crates, and I believe we should work towards that, we can't do it overnight, but we must do it in partnership with farmers, not at their expense. We must be honest with the public, fair to producers, and ambitious for animal welfare. And I'll finish by quoting probably the most famous veterinary surgeon of all, is James Herriot. He says, if having a soul means being able to feel love and loyalty and gratitude, then animals are better off than a lot of humans. Thank you.
I call Shadow Minister Dr Neil Hudson.
Thank you, Mr Mundell. It's a great pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today. And can I first of all congratulate the Honourable Member for North Ayrshire and Arran for securing this debate and leading on this debate. Mr Mundell, I declare a strong professional and personal interest in this issue of animal health and welfare as a veterinary surgeon and as a fellow of the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons. We've had some very thought-provoking and wide-ranging presentations today. Can I start with paying a tribute again to the member for North Ayrshire and Arran, who I always very much enjoy hearing from her. She is an incredibly powerful and passionate champion in the area of animal welfare, and more strength to your elbow. Keep going. Can I also acknowledge my honourable friend, the member for Bridlington and the Wolds, for bringing his expertise in the porcine sector and actually talking about some of the key safety issues, especially in terms of pig husbandry techniques. The honourable members for Mansfield and South Devon spoke, and the honourable member for South West Norfolk, the importance of biosecurity in his part of the world, very, very pivotal, as it is across the entire United Kingdom. The honourable member for Dewsbury and Batley, who spoke powerfully about the moral and ethical aspects of our duty of care to animals under our care. The members for, and we had a wide-ranging speeches from across the country as well, from Hexham to Glastonbury and Somerton to Bournemouth East. And the member for Cannock Chase, again, a real powerful advocate for animal welfare, and some very thoughtful comments about the principles of labelling as well. And then culminating in the presentation from my friend and veterinary colleague, the member for Winchester, and full credit to him for quoting James Herriot in this speech as well. I must remember to do that next time. This debate, Mr Mundell, like all petitions debates, is conducted because over 100,000 people across the country have signed a petition, which we today are debating. May I thank all those across the country. I think the numbers as it stands today is over 105,000 who have signed the petition, including the 182 people in my constituency of Epping Forest and the many people who've written to me on this issue, for allowing us today to debate this important animal and bird welfare issue. It is important to have this opportunity to also hold the new government to account on their plans that they have documented for trying to improve animal welfare. As members here are no doubt already aware, the UK has some of the highest animal welfare standards in the world, and I am proud that our country has shown global leadership in this regard. The previous Conservative government's achievements in improving animal welfare I am very proud of, such as banning the export of live animals, including cattle, sheep, pigs and horses for fattening or slaughter, with the Animal Welfare Livestock Exports Act 2024, increasing the maximum prison sentence for animal cruelty from 6 months to 5 years with the Animal Welfare Sentencing Act of 2021, and pivotally enshrining animal sentience into UK law. We've heard a lot about animal sentience today, but enshrining it into UK law with the Animal Welfare Sentience Act 2022, therefore establishing the very important Animal Sentience Committee such that any new legislation must pay due regard to animal welfare. In the United Kingdom, we have brilliant farmers who farm to the highest animal welfare standards. And we should, Mr. Mundell, be incredibly proud of that fact. And as I've said many times before, we can be a beacon to the rest of the world in this regard. I want to today again pay tribute to our farmers, our growers and producers that help feed the nation and also nurture our precious environment. However, it is right that we continue to raise the bar, and I welcome this opportunity to discuss further the particular issue of the use of cages and crates for farmed animals. The opposition has made clear, and in fact I did so just earlier this month on the 3rd of June during the debate on animal welfare standards in farming, that we support banning cages or close confinement systems where clear scientific evidence demonstrates they are detrimental to animal, bird health and welfare. This is in keeping with much of the UK's existing legislation on the use of cages and crates, including the ban on keeping calves in veal crates introduced in 1990, the ban on keeping sows in close confinement stalls in the UK introduced in 1999, and the ban on the issue of the use of battery cages for laying hens introduced in 2012. Under the previous Conservative government, ministers were clear that it was their ambition for farrowing crates to no longer be used for sows. Indeed, the new Pig Welfare Code clearly states the aim is for farrowing crates to no longer be necessary and for any new system to protect the welfare of the sow as well as her piglets. With regard to poultry, it's very welcome to see that the market itself has been very influential in moving away from the use of cages in the laying of hens, for example, and instead working towards alternative systems, including free range and barn. It too is greatly welcome that this has also been driven by retailers acknowledging the part they can play in raising welfare standards, with the transition to non-cage egg production being accelerated in recent years by major supermarkets committing to the ending of selling shell eggs from hens kept in colony cages by 2025, including an extension on their commitment to include products containing liquid or powdered eggs by some supermarkets. Around 75% of British eggs come from free-range, barn and organic production systems, which is a clear testament to the improved picture of bird welfare we are seeing in this field over recent years. And in particular, it is a testament to all those across these supply chains, from farmers to retailers, who've acted in the interests of bird and animal welfare, and I want to acknowledge that very much today. Further work with farmers, and I stress with farmers, and we've heard that today, with farmers rather than to farmers, I think has been a key take-home message of today. But further work with farmers, supermarkets and other retailers to help ensure this figure increases in the years to come is still needed. And I hope that the government can commit today in this debate to keep doing that. Now, returning to the porcine sector, the government has been asked if it has plans to support free farrowing systems or to launch a consultation on the use of farrowing crates for pigs. The Minister has previously confirmed that the government is considering very carefully the use of cages and other close confinement systems for farmed animals, including farrowing crates, and I'm sure we will hear more about how he's considering things closely today. It's essential that we make good progress towards a system that works both commercially and ensures the welfare of the sow and her piglets. Tragically, as we have heard, it can happen that sows can lie on their piglets and crush them unintentionally, and we must ensure that any new approach safeguards both the mother and her young. I know that this issue of farrowing crates used for sows and piglets has been raised as a particular area of focus by the RSPCA and other organisations such as the British Veterinary Association, the National Pig Association, the NFU, the Conservative Animal Welfare Foundation, 4 Paws and Compassion in World Farming. I note, for example, the British Veterinary Association calling for a phasing out of farrowing crates and that the government should provide a 15-year transition period by which all new builds cannot contain existing farrowing crates except where already agreed, to be followed by a shifting of a crate system to alternative methods such as adaptive farrowing accommodation or free farrowing systems as soon as possible. I hope the Minister can provide further clarification on how the government intends to approach this issue, and I'm sure he will be doing that today. I note that in the revision of the Animal Health and Welfare Pathway in March, the government stated transition out of cages was one of their priorities, and they are exploring potential reforms in this area. This therefore raises questions that I hope the Minister will answer about their process in looking at this area. Firstly, can the Minister confirm whether any future decision on the use of cages and crates will be put to an evidence-based consultation? Likewise, regarding process, can the Minister confirm that in any future decisions regarding this, they will consider a plan that considers the needs and impacts of any moves on the industry? The National Pig Association and the Building Suppliers Forum also concur with the British Veterinary Association that at least 15 years would be required to move from conventional farrowing to flexible or free farrowing. And it's noted that there are significant costs to replacing practices that would be banned for acceptable ones. Can I therefore ask the Minister if the government will ensure that if they plan any reforms, that they will work with industry to make sure it's affordable, practical and ultimately effective, and also very much at the heart of it promoting animal and bird welfare. It is essential that we make good progress towards systems and swift progress that both ensures the welfare of animals and birds and can work pragmatically and viably for the sector. While the UK can be proud of our domestic track record when it comes to animal welfare, we must not lose sight of the global scale of animal welfare issues. The previous Conservative government made clear that the UK's high standards were a red line in its trade negotiations, and there must be no compromise on environmental protection, animal welfare or food standards. That is why, although we may not have got everything right on these issues, the free trade agreements signed by the previous government with countries like Australia and New Zealand very importantly included dedicated chapters on animal welfare, the first of their kind in any such trade deals. It is also why the Leader of the Opposition, when she was Trade Secretary, stood up for our animal welfare standards during trade negotiations with Canada, stepping back from talks to ensure there were no concessions on our red line of banning the import to the UK of hormone-treated beef. Now, whether it is Labour or Conservatives in government, we must continue to uphold animal welfare standards in trade deals. Doing so is not simply a case of upholding high animal welfare, ensuring food is safe to eat, but also ensuring our hard-working farmers are not unfairly undercut by other countries where standards may be lower. Our high standards must not be put at risk as this government seeks to negotiate new trade deals, specifically on the point of a ban of hormone-treated beef, ractopamine-treated pork, bovine somatotropin dairy, and chlorine-washed chicken products, and the use of antibiotics as growth promoters, practices that are illegal in this country. I have said this many times before, and I will say it again as a Member of Parliament and as a veterinary surgeon. Keeping firm on these standards makes clear beyond all doubt that we as a nation are committed to animal welfare, and other countries will then know that should they wish to trade with us, they must meet our standards and our values. And this extends now to the use of cages and crates for imported animal products. Many countries, including the United States, still allow the use of sow stalls, despite the UK having legislated to end the practice long ago. Can the Minister assure us that no animal products will be imported to the UK that have used sow stalls in their process? I note that just last Thursday, on the 12th of June, the government finally provided its response to the Fairer Food Labelling consultation conducted by the previous Conservative government, no doubt from repeated prompting from His Majesty's opposition in recent days, weeks and months. I note that the government, in its somewhat sparse response, the government stated that they will consider the potential role of the method of production labelling reform as part of the UK government's development of an overarching approach to animal welfare and the wider food strategy. So I look forward to the Minister elaborating on that somewhat economical response to the major consultation. Firstly, greater clarity for sectors affected by any change would be very much welcome. And as such, could I ask the government to outline a timeline for which they expect to be able to publish their new strategy on animal welfare and any legislative changes in the area of labelling? Secondly, could the government clarify why, despite the closing of the consultation in May 2024, they've only been able to provide their response just last week? Even accounting for election to office in July, this still means it's had 11 months for those who took the time to contribute to the consultation to get a somewhat limited response. Could they therefore assure the public that this is not an indication of any lack of interest in this area from this government? Labelling will help in many facets of this debate to allow UK consumers to make informed decisions about the food they purchase and if they can see the provenance of the food and how it was produced. Can the Minister, and I've raised this with him many times, can the Minister further clarify how it will address the loophole that still exists in the government buying standards in public procurement that allows public bodies to deviate from high animal welfare standards on the grounds of cost? On the procurement point, we cannot be a beacon of animal welfare for countries around the world if we ourselves do not have our own house in order. So I'd greatly appreciate an answer on this point, as I've asked him a few times before now. It is vital that we uphold our rigorous standards on animal welfare and retain the UK's status as a world leader on animal welfare issues. I urge the government to treat this matter with the seriousness and urgency it deserves and does not allow any backsliding on existing legislation as it seeks to secure new trade deals with the United States and other countries. To have high animal welfare standards, we need to have healthy animals, and for that, we need strong biosecurity, Mr. Mundell. I have repeatedly called on the government to urgently redevelop the Animal and Plant Health Agency, the APHA, their HQ in Weybridge in Surrey. The APHA is absolutely critical in protecting against devastating diseases, such as foot and mouth disease, seen just this year in Germany, Hungary and Slovakia, and African swine fever advancing up the continent of Europe. The Minister knows that I will keep pushing the government on this. We had the spending review just last week, and the Chancellor did not mention DEFRA, animal health or farming once in her statement, nor was there any mention of reversing the catastrophic family farm tax, and there was no mention of the APHA project in the spending review, either in the statement or in the Blue Book. Minister, will the government finish the work that the Conservatives started when we committed £1.2 billion to redevelop the HQ? Labour keep repeatedly re-announcing a pot of £208 million, which is a figure very familiar to the Minister. It's a start, but when will it commit the further £1.4 billion for this critical national infrastructure for the sake of British farming, food production, and indeed, as we've heard today, our national security? I want to conclude my remarks by once again thanking everyone for their contributions in today's debate, for our fantastic farmers that keep food on our table. It is clear that there's much interest across the House in this issue, and I look forward to hearing the Minister and his thoughtful response.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to serve with you in the chair, Mr. Mundell. And may I join others in thanking the Petitions Committee and congratulate the Honourable Member for North Ayrshire and Arran for not only introducing the debate, but bringing her usual thoughtfulness and passion to this subject. And can I also join others in thanking all those who signed the petition, which meant that we were able to debate this important issue today. As others have mentioned, this is the third consecutive week where we've debated farm animal welfare issues, which probably brings home just how much the public and we value how animals are treated. We are genuinely a nation of animal lovers. We're also a nation that needs to eat, so can I also thank all those who are involved in the farming processes, in the food production sector, who help keep us fed. Now, the issue of confinement and the use of cages in farming has been a long-standing subject, which has been brought to the attention of members several times over recent years, and I have to say it's consistently been a topic that's come across my desk since I've been a minister. As a nation, as has been said, we are rightly proud of high welfare standards. On confinement, veal crates for calves were banned in 1990, sow stalls for pigs banned in 1999, and barren battery cages for laying hens in 2012. And I will reiterate what I said in the debate on animal welfare standards in farming on the 3rd of June. We're absolutely determined to build on and maintain our world-leading record on animal health and welfare, and are absolutely committed to ensuring that animals receive the care, respect and protection they rightly deserve in whatever farming system in which they're kept. Now, in addition to this e-petition, there have been a number of campaigns urging the government to publish consultations to ban the use of enriched colony cages for laying hens and farrowing crates for pigs. And I can assure you, Mr Mundell, I'm keen to act and certainly don't want to fall behind those EU countries that have already banned or are in the process of banning cages and crates. But I am acutely aware that these are complex issues that need careful consideration, particularly with regard to food security and trade. And I want to work closely with the sectors, bring them with us to improve animal welfare standards together, whilst maintaining a thriving, sustainable and competitive industry. Now, the petition calls for a ban on cages for laying hens as soon as possible. Enriched colony cages are a significant welfare improvement on barren battery cages, as they're required to have nest boxes, litters and perches, but they do not fully provide for the physical and behavioural needs of the birds, as the colony cage system restricts a hen's choice, preventing her ability to run, flap her wings, dust bath or forage, as my honourable friend, the member for Mansfield, raised in detailing the concerns that have been raised by his constituents. Now, the UK laying hen sector has already made significant progress in moving away from enriched colony cages. The transition has been supported by the major supermarkets, which made a pledge in 2016 to stop selling shell eggs from caged hens by the end of 2025, with some retailers extending this pledge to products containing liquid or processed egg. And I'm pleased to say that the percentage of eggs from enriched colony cage systems still continues to fall, with the current level being just 18% of the total UK throughput in Q1 of 2025, with free-range eggs now accounting for 70% of the total. And as my honourable friend, the member for Hexham, detailed, the retailer pledge in response to consumer demand is to be welcomed, but it has to be said, not all supermarkets are committed to cage-free. Real-world considerations around affordability for consumers, I'm afraid, is clearly at the fore in some of those decisions. Now, although the retailer pledge is significant, it does not raise welfare standards across the whole of the laying hen industry. Whilst the retail element is the largest part of the market at 65%, the food service and egg processing elements are not insignificant, representing 18% and 17% of the market respectively. And focus needs to be on addressing the welfare of laying hens producing eggs for those retailers who haven't signed the pledge, and for the food service and egg processing markets. Now, to help the sector, this government is providing financial assistance to laying hen and pullet farmers in England with flocks of 1,000 birds or more, with £22.5 million of allocated grant funding via the Animal Health and Welfare Pathway to refurbish or replace existing housing, including those looking to make the transition from enriched colony cages to high welfare non-cage systems. Turning to the pig sector, we already have a significant outdoor pig sector, as we've heard, with 50% of the national sow breeding herd giving birth freely on outdoor units with no confinement. But 50% of breeding sows are kept indoors, with approximately 42% of those confined in farrowing crates from around 5 days before they are due to give birth, until the piglets are weaned at approximately 28 days of age. When the Farm Animal Welfare Committee, now known as the Animal Welfare Committee, reviewed the welfare of pigs in farrowing crates, it recommended that, in considering which farrowing system to adopt or support, farmers, the pig industry as a whole and other stakeholders, such as retailers, should consider the welfare of both sows and piglets and be aware they're not necessarily benefited by the same things, a point made by a range of speakers earlier. Its considerations included sow comfort and freedom to nest building material being made available in the period before and after farrowing, the avoidance of sow injuries from interaction with the floor, pen, furniture or piglets, floor design being given more priority in design of farrowing accommodation, protection of piglet welfare, including prevention of injury or death in an environment in which they can thrive, and promotion of hygiene and avoidance of disease in both sows and piglets. Now, there is consensus that the farrowing crate restricts sow movement, preventing her from turning around and performing normal behaviours such as nest building, again as my honourable friend, the member for South West Norfolk, pointed out. And animal welfare NGOs such as the RSPCA and Compassion in World Farming have campaigned for a long time for government to ban farrowing crates. And I'm also well aware the British Veterinary Association and the Pig Veterinary Society have recently called for a gradual phase out of farrowing crates and for them to be replaced with a system that maximises sow and piglet welfare and ensures human safety. I welcome their contribution to the ongoing debate. I also know the National Pig Association recognises the direction of travel is transitioning away from farrowing crates and have been doing a lot of work in this area. And indeed, some producers have already made the move to alternative farrowing systems. And as the Honourable Member for Bridlington and Wold, who I thought spoke, as usual, with great knowledge and sensitivity about these issues, industry estimates that around 8% of the British indoor pig herd are now flexibly farrowed, where the sow can be confined on a temporary basis and for a limited period to protect her piglets in those crucial early days of their lives. Now, flexible farrowing, also termed temporary crating or adaptive farrowing, is where the sow is confined without the ability to turn round only on a temporary basis for a few days around farrowing and the initial suckling phase before movable restraining bars are opened to give the sow space to turn around. The other alternative to farrowing crates is a move directly to free farrowing systems where there is no confinement of the sow when in farrowing and lactation accommodation, allowing the sow to freely turn around and have the opportunity to more fully perform nest building activities. And a significant part of our consideration around alternative systems is the evidence around sow and piglet welfare and stock person welfare. And I was very struck by the point made earlier by an honourable friend about the dangers facing stock people. We recognise that moving out of farrowing crates requires a fundamental change for producers and significant investment, again as we have heard. On that note, it's encouraging to see the investment commitment some retailers have made to improve the farrowing experience for pigs. Now, the honourable member speaking for the opposition asked me about how we will go forward on this. And the government, as we bring forward proposals, it will be subject to full consultation. And we absolutely recognise it will need time for industry to adapt. Farrowing accommodation will need to be considerably adapted, potentially rebuilt and extended to allow for a larger pen footprint, which will clearly impose significant costs on the indoor pig sector. And I have to say, it will also require communities to recognise that the planning system will have to accommodate changes to allow better welfare. So we absolutely need to get the specifications right. Training will also be essential for stock people to adapt to a brand new system and ensure both human and pig welfare. Now, members have raised the issue of trade, and I can assure you, Mr Mundell, I'm very mindful of what happened in 1999 when the UK unilaterally banned sow stalls. Whilst it was the right thing to do in animal welfare terms, it did, as has been said, contribute to a reported 40% decline in the pig breeding herd in the following decade, opening the door, sadly, to more pig meat imports from countries still using sow stalls. So it's essential that we carefully evaluate the implications of potential cage and crate bans on trade. We need to carefully consider the potential for unintentionally replacing UK production with lower welfare production overseas. Now, we know that the EU Commission, and my honourable friend from Bournemouth East raised this point, the EU Commission are considering proposals to ban cages and crates, and they've said the first legislative proposals on cage reform will be announced in 2026. but we don't know yet what phase-out periods they will propose or how long it will take them to get agreement amongst member states. We are acutely aware of the concern about imports produced using methods not permitted in the UK, and I can reassure the honourable gentleman opposite that we are consistently clear that we'll use our trade strategy to promote the highest food production standards, and we will protect farmers from being undercut by low welfare and low standards in trade deals. Very happy to.
Of the European Union's plans with regard to phasing out cages, in particular farrowing crates, would it be his ambition to align as closely as possible to that, given the symbiotic trading relationship of products between the EU and the UK, particularly with pig meat, so that we don't end up at a situation where we have banned something that the European Union is still using and we end up in a similar situation to 1999 and sow stalls?
Makes an important point, and clearly, having made the observation about what happened in 1999, we don't want to return to that situation. Let me turn to labelling. Considerable work has been done recently to consider the merits of method of production labelling, and again, this was raised by the honourable gentleman opposite and also by my honourable friend and member for Cannock Chase, who has talked about it repeatedly in this place. Now, as we've heard, a consultation on proposals to improve and extend current method of production labelling was undertaken last year by the previous government. It sought views on proposals to improve and extend current mandatory method of production labelling, and I'm pleased to say that, as the honourable gentleman has noticed, we've now published the government's response, which is available on gov.uk. And in looking at that, we recognise the strong support from members of the public and many other stakeholders for the provision of clearer information for consumers on the welfare standards of their food. We've also heard and understood the views raised on the detail of the consultation proposals by the many interested parties who have responded. And I can assure him and other members that we are carefully considering the potential role of method of production labelling reform as part of the government's wider animal welfare and food strategies. And as he will have appreciated, the Prime Minister announced that we'll be announcing an animal welfare strategy by the end of the year. Now, turning finally to game birds, Mr Mundell, approximately 40 million game birds, 30 to 35 million pheasants and 5 to 10 million partridges are estimated to be released each year in Great Britain. Game birds bred and reared for sporting purposes are not subject to the same legislative requirements on welfare as farmed poultry, as they are not regarded as farmed animals. They are, however, protected by the Animal Welfare Act 2006, which makes it an offence to cause any animal under the control of humans unnecessary suffering or fail to provide for the welfare needs of the animal. DEFRA's statutory code of practice for the welfare of game birds reared for sporting purposes provides keepers with guidance on how to meet welfare needs of their game birds as required by the Animal Welfare Act. It recommends that barren cages for breeding pheasants and small barren cages for breeding partridges should not be used, and that any system should be appropriately enriched. So to conclude, I thank the honourable members for securing this debate. I want to reassure members that the issue of confinement is one that I take very seriously. The government was elected on a mandate to introduce the most ambitious plans in a generation to improve animal welfare, and that is exactly what we will do. The department has initiated a series of meetings with key stakeholders as part of the development of an overarching approach to animal welfare. As I've said, the Prime Minister committed to publishing an animal welfare strategy later this year. It's exactly what we'll do, and I look forward to being able to outline more detail in due course.
And to conclude, I call Irene Campbell to wind up the debate.
Thank you, Mr Mundell. Our Labour government was elected with a manifesto which promised to improve animal welfare, and I'm encouraged by what the Minister has just said. The previous New Labour government had some of the most ambitious and groundbreaking animal welfare improvements that the UK had ever seen. The New Life for Animals manifesto led to the EU-wide ban on battery cages, the ban on hunting foxes with hounds, the Animal Welfare Act, the ban of cosmetic testing on animals, and the ban on fur farming. Next year will be the 20th anniversary of our historic Animal Welfare Act of 2006. Yet since the UK left the EU, we have been downgraded in the World Farming Protection Index, and it's time to strengthen our animal welfare standards and make the UK a leader in animal welfare once again. I would ask that our Labour government starts the consultation on cages for hens and farrowing crates for sows. How we treat our animals reflects our own values as a society, and it's time to take action now. More consistent and descriptive labelling in relation to method of production should be introduced to enable people to fully consider how the product they are buying has been produced. And this should apply to all products, especially non-UK products. And this is only fair to our British farmers that this is done. And finally, I would like to thank Dame Joanna Lumley and Compassion in World Farming for starting this petition, and to congratulate her in gathering over 105,000 signatures. I would also like to thank the Petitions Committee staff for their hard work in as always, their hard work in coordinating these debates. And I would also like to thank all groups I met with before this debate, including the National Pig Association, the NFU and the RSPCA. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered E-petition 706-302 relating to the use of cages and crates for farmed animals. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order. Order. The sitting stands adjourned.